On this episode, we are going to talk about triggers. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot. It's a very popular term these days, but we are going to explore what it really means, what it looks like, what it feels like, and what it does to our parenting style.
Welcome to the Fiercely Gentle podcast.
Gentle parenting is not just about how we respond to our kids. It's also about who we are becoming as parents.
So many of us were raised in traditional homes and were taught to listen and comply. But now we want to do things differently. I'm KJ Althoff.
And I'm Ashley Kanazowicz. We're two imperfect moms trying to navigate parenting, overcome our triggers, and share what we're learning so you don't have to feel so alone.
Let's come together and learn how to become more fierce in our values so that we can stay gentle in our parenting.
This is Fiercely Gentle. So let me ask you, have you ever been triggered in your parenting journey?
Have I ever been triggered? When am I
right?
not triggered? No, I'm just kidding. Yes,
Yeah.
a lot, even to this day. And I've been reparenting myself for 7 years now, and I still get triggered. What about you? Yeah.
Same. And, I think I'll have a certain trigger in particular under control. I feel like I've done some of the inner healing and I've moved past it. And then that trigger just hits me in slightly a different way on that day. And, it's just a cycle of starting all over again. So we all get triggered. We all have those moments where something is setting us off and we're feeling big emotions and it's hard to control what we say next or what we do next, how we react to our child. What is an actual trigger? What does that actually mean? What's happening inside of us?
Well, the way I like to describe what a trigger is it's a very strong emotional reaction to a certain behavior. And in the parenting world, it's often our children's behavior. It's something that is external, yet it causes a reaction in our body that we don't think about. It just happens. And what's actually happening is our body is being put into a fight or flight state. It is recognizing that behavior as a threat. And I like to use the example, we like analogies here, but I always like to use the example of being in the woods and coming face to face with a hungry bear. If that actually were the case, if you actually were face to face with a hungry bear in the woods, your body would automatically go into survival mode. And what you're going to feel is your heart racing. Your muscles start to get tense, basically ready to fight the bear or run as fast as you can. So your adrenaline's pumping. Your body is getting ready to protect you and keep you alive, basically. And that's exactly what your body is meant to do. It's doing its job. It is trying to keep you alive. The thing is that your body doesn't necessarily always recognize what's in front of you. They think that it's a bear when it could just be your child throwing a tantrum. But somewhere down the line, you learned that certain behaviors were not safe to experience. And a lot of that stems from our childhood and what we experienced growing up. So our bodies kind of learned anything similar, any situation that's similar is a threat to my well-being. And that's what happens when we get triggered. Our bodies, if you notice, our bodies go into that fight or flight state. We experience different symptoms in our bodies that's preparing us to fight or flee the situation.
That makes so much sense. And it really explains why it feels so out of our control in the moment, because when you are face to face with a bear, you don't have time to sit there and think, should I be alarmed about this?
Exactly.
Your body is going to take over and you're going to jump into that mode automatically because you have to act in a split second. And so then in our parenting world, our children are not bears. And we have to train ourselves to force that moment of thought while we're being triggered. Right.
Yeah.
So that we don't automatically jump into that fight or flight mode.
Yeah. That's exactly what reparenting is. That's what you and I do every day as gentle
Yeah.
parents. And it is us rewiring our minds to see situations differently, to remind ourselves this feels like a threat. This feels like something that I need to protect myself from. But really, it's not. Everything's fine. It's not an emergency. My child is fine. I'm fine. This behavior is developmentally appropriate. We'll be able to get through it. It's honestly
Mhm.
teaching yourself to see the behavior in the situation differently from what you are automatically wired to see it as.
And I feel like understanding that this is something that just automatically happens and there is a way to introduce that pause and, like you said, rewire your brain. I think understanding that is kind of half the battle
Hmm.
because when you are triggered and you do react, there's so much shame and guilt and wishing you could
Hmm.
do things differently. Knowing that that's just your body's automatic response, I feel like
Hmm.
kind of lifts some of that guilt. And you can
Hmm.
like focus more of your attention on the reparenting and
Yeah.
not have to focus necessarily so much
Yeah.
on the shame and the why do I keep doing this? Because
Yeah.
it's a very natural reason why we keep doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. The awareness piece is definitely step one in your
Hmm.
healing and reparenting journey. And that does help alleviate some of that shame and guilt you feel because once you can recognize and acknowledge that a lot of what triggers you is out of your control, you don't have
Yeah.
control over it. You are triggered for a reason. And if you haven't had the chance to connect the dots yet and learn what you need to heal from and how to reparent yourself, that trigger is going to continue to affect you. So the
Hmm.
awareness piece is really, really important because once you can recognize this makes sense that I'm triggered by this behavior, it's not because I'm a bad mom. It's not
Hmm.
because I'm failing as a mom. It's because of how I was raised, or it was because of this traumatic experience I had growing up. There's a reason for it. And once you can identify what that reason is, you can start working towards healing from that and rewiring your mind and body to start
Yeah.
reacting or responding differently to those situations that normally trigger you.
So, what would you say those next steps would look like once you figure out I'm being triggered?
Hmm.
Maybe you even figure out why you're being triggered and where this is stemming from in your childhood. And you have that information. We talk about
Hmm.
reparenting, rewiring our brain. What do we do? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, the awareness piece is number one, but then I think number two is learning the why, learning how to connect the dots, asking yourself questions, getting curious, and learning more about yourself and connecting the dots between your triggers and your childhood. So,
Hmm.
for example, if you're triggered by your child talking back at you,
Yeah.
that's a
Yes,
common
I am.
trigger. Yes, so am I. But if you think about it, traditionally raised kids were not allowed to talk back to their
No,
parents at all. And
definitely not.
we would get in trouble. We would get punished or spanked or put in timeout or, yelled at, whatever. We learned time and time again over the period of our childhood that that kind of behavior was unsafe because we experienced something negative from it. We disappointed our parents. We felt
Hmm.
unloved. We felt ashamed. Whatever it was, we associated talking back as unsafe. However, that
Yeah.
experience was for us. So now, as parents, when our children are talking back to us, our bodies can recognize that behavior and kind of alert your system to be like, oh, warning, this is unsafe. We got to get the body ready for this threat to handle it. We need to shut it down immediately. And that's when we emotionally react to it. Even though logically we might think, okay, this is developmentally appropriate. My child doesn't know how to communicate. You can have
Hmm.
those thoughts and logically know. But if your body still gets very triggered by that, the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of your brain that handles the logic and can handle the executive functioning of better understanding the situation, that shuts down when you are completely triggered and in survival state. And your amygdala, your lower brain, however that's called, or your lizard brain is also another term that's used for it. That's what automatically tells your body, hey, you gotta be on alert to
Hmm.
protect yourself, right? So that is what is primarily running your brain at that point,
Yeah.
and you're not able to think clearly. You're just reacting. Being able to tie the trigger to your childhood experiences can really help you understand why the trigger exists in the first place.
One thing that was interesting for me to learn as I started to explore my childhood triggers was that while some of them are pretty straightforward, like if your kid is yelling at you, it triggers you from when you were yelled at. So that's something happening to you as a child, and now it's happening to you again as a parent. But sometimes those triggers are not quite so obvious. Sometimes it's your child behaving in a way that you know you were not allowed to behave when you were a kid. And so that's not your body experiencing the same situation happening to you. It's kind of like a role reversal. And I feel like sometimes those triggers are harder to find.
It's your child that is behaving
Hmm.
in a way that you used to behave that wasn't safe for you when you were a child, but
Hmm.
your body remembers just that behavior isn't safe. So whether
Yeah.
or not it's you doing the behavior or your child doing the behavior or someone else doing the behavior, like I would get triggered if, for example, if I heard someone else talking back to another person, that would trigger me. Even if the conflict wasn't happening at me and I was just witnessing it, like my body just would recognize that behavior is not safe. I guess you could also look at it as maybe subconsciously you're wanting to protect your child in that moment, you know?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah, it's
remembering.
like when you learn that touching something hot burns you,
Hmm.
as soon as you see somebody else about to touch something hot, your reaction is still like, "Oh no, don't do that," even though
Right.
it's not
Because you
happening
know.
directly to you in your
Right.
body.
Right. And then I think
Yeah.
there's another component to that because it also ties a lot to your values. So growing
Mm.
up, if talking back equals disrespect to someone of
Uh,
authority, then it could also be when your child talks back to you, you feel disrespected. And that's
yeah.
triggering because being respected is very important to you. That was ingrained in you. So I feel like it's very complex. The trigger is not so black and
Yeah.
white. Like I'm triggered because of this. There's so many components to it, which is why reparenting and healing takes a lot of time.
I was going to say it seems very layered. There can be many different layers of reasons for being triggered just in
Mhm.
one scenario.
The image that comes up for me right now talking about this is different colored balls of yarn. This can be very relatable, Ashley, because you crochet.
I love yarn.
I know you do. But if you were to have 10 different colors of yarn and you just mix them all up and you just have this
Mm,
giant ball of yarn, like different
that
colored
triggers me
yarn.
already.
I know, and on different in a different way.
Yeah.
But if you can imagine 10 different colors all jumbled together into one clump of this yarn, and let's say that that jumble of yarn is your trigger, it's going to
Mm,
take time to separate each color. Then each color could be a reason that trigger exists. And it's going to take time to
mhm,
unravel that color. And let's say once you do that, that you kind of healed that part, you've rewired, you've reparented yourself for that reason. But then you have all these other colors still. So it takes time just because you maybe work through one aspect of a childhood wound you have doesn't mean that you're no longer going to be triggered by that behavior because there could be other
yeah.
layers related to why you might be triggered by that specific behavior.
That is an amazing analogy because I hate untangling yarn. And I love like crocheting and yarn and that kind of craft in particular brings me so much joy. But if I come to a ball of yarn that is too tangled, I'm
Hmm.
tempted to just quit and not do it
Hmm.
anymore. I love being a mother and I love my children. But when you come to this tangle of this childhood wound or this trigger, you can't just stop parenting. You have to
Hmm.
work through it. You can't just throw it away. You have to keep untangling and keep picking at it.
And that's why I love gentle parents because most of us were not gentle parented ourselves. Most of us carry with us this jumble of yarn. And most people choose not to deal with it because it's hard and it takes
Yeah.
time and it takes work. So they don't deal with it. They just continue to carry it around and it affects their parenting and it affects the relationship with their kids.
Yeah.
But gentle parents who are choosing to reparent themselves and break cycles, they are choosing to untangle that big ball of yarn. And that's so hard to do while you continue to parent. So while you continue to get triggered instead of being like, everyone else is a problem but me, they're like, okay, this is a problem. I'm going to work through it and learn slowly how to continue to untangle this ball of yarn so that I can have that relationship with my child that I wish I had with my parents.
And to continue with the analogy, you can't continue to crochet. Like you can keep trying, you can keep pulling on that yarn, but you're going to hit that knot. You're going to keep hitting that
Hmm.
same knot over and over and over again until you untangle it. And the
Right.
same thing is going to happen in your parenting. Until you untangle that trigger and you work on reparenting, you're going to continue to get triggered by that same thing every single time it comes up.
Yeah.
So we've identified what triggers are. We can do the work and trace them back to our childhood and figure out what that is rooted in. And then what? What's step three?
And so hard because it makes it sound very simplified. Like just follow these steps. Step one,
And
step
it's
two, step
not.
three. It really
Yeah.
isn't. Because step three could be basically just you reparenting yourself and rewiring and going to therapy and trial
Hmm.
and error in your parenting, trying different strategies, working through conflict with your child, repairing, journaling, meditation, healing yourself, taking care of your mental health. It's basically all of the work that is required and needed to untangle that big ball of yarn. So
Yeah.
you can try to simplify it and try to put into steps because there really is like a first step is be aware that this is not a you problem. You're not the problem. It is the conditioning that you experienced growing up. That is what the
Yeah.
problem is. And so having that awareness can help you not have to carry that guilt and shame that there's something wrong with you as a parent and that it's hopeless and that you're failing because you're not. If you're listening to this
Hmm.
episode and it's resonating with you, it's because you're a really good parent and you want to do better and you want to learn and you want to heal and you don't want to pass it down to your kids. And again, most parents don't take the time to work on themselves.
Hmm.
So the ones that are, I can't even put into words just how amazing and incredible it is for any parent to choose this journey of reparenting
Yeah.
themselves.
And I like that you specifically called it a journey because it's like you can check off step one. Okay, identify that I'm being triggered. Done. You
Hmm.
can sort of check off step two, identify the childhood wounds that are leading to this trigger. Got it. Done. But that step three, that reparenting, it is a
Hmm.
journey. There
It
is no
really
check
is.
mark at the end. It's
No.
every situation, every new milestone with your kids, every new
Mhm.
age. And as you grow, different things are going to come up, different
Yeah.
layers are going to be exposed. And so it's like steps one and two are really just preparing you for the lifelong journey of accepting that healing is a part of your life
It's a
for the
lifelong
rest of
journey.
your life.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it for sure. Because we could all be on step three right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to look different for all of us because my healing journey is going to look different from yours. The things I have to do to reparent myself is not the exact same things that you have to do to reparent yourself. I
Hmm.
guess we're all on this journey of reparenting ourselves. And like you said, it's going to look different because our kids are going to get older and they're going to trigger us in different ways. And
Yeah.
I'm already experiencing that because my son talking back to me now looks and feels different from him talking back to me at age 2, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm working through this stage of being triggered by that behavior. And I know it's going to look different when he's a teenager and he's talking back to
Oh
me,
gosh.
you know?
Everyone says like, oh, just wait until they're a teenager. But
Hmm.
how it feels now when my 8-year-old talks back to me, I'm like, I sincerely hope I have all of my stuff together by the time she's a talking back teenager so that it can be smoother than I'm
Yeah.
anticipating.
But even with that, and I say this for both, for me too,
Yeah.
is that I don't know if we necessarily will get to a point where we are going to be prepared when our kids
Yeah.
are teenagers and they talk back to us. We're doing all this reparenting right now because we're handling our kids at the stage they're in right now.
Hmm.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be all ready and prepared when they're teenagers. However, we're building skills right now to, I guess, better prepare ourselves, or at least to know that we can get through
Hmm.
those
I was
situations,
gonna say it's like we're
right?
building the stamina.
Yeah, we're going to be triggered. When our kids are teenagers and they're doing their teenager things, we're going to get triggered by that. And I think
Yeah.
it's trying to prepare our minds and our bodies to recognize, okay, we're triggered, but we can get through this, that this is something
Yep.
that we'll be able to push through and work through with our kids.
That is really encouraging, even knowing that the teen years are kind of looming
I know.
in this triggering kind of way. The
Oh my
work we're doing
goodness.
now is going to benefit the work we'll
Yeah.
do later,
Yeah.
I think is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I think the goal is definitely not to never be triggered because that's
Yeah.
unrealistic. We're always going to feel triggered. Our bodies
Yeah.
are always going to prepare us for something. That's what it's meant to do. But the goal is to feel confident working through it, I think, and looking at it that way.
Yeah. I agree. I love that. Accepting that it's going to happen
Hmm.
and growing the confidence to push through
Yeah.
and grow and learn. So we talked about being triggered by talking back. Both of us are. What are some other just random things that your son does that triggers you?
Mhm. Talking back's a huge one. Not listening is another
Same. Oh
huge
my
one.
gosh.
Especially for like simple requests, that's still triggering for me, especially when I'm in a mindset of just trying to go, go, go and get things done.
Yeah.
And sometimes my son is on the same page and sometimes he's not. And on the days when we're not on the same page, it's really hard to work through that,
Hmm.
So that's definitely another trigger of mine. And I think the other trigger I have is just the attitude.
Mm.
The
The
tone
kind of
and the
like
attitude,
sassy. Yeah.
sassiness. Yeah. Yeah. I could do without that.
Yeah. Same. All of those for me as
Yeah.
well. Yes.
Yeah.
So, not listening is a big one for me as well. But also, being told that I haven't listened to them triggers me almost even more when I am listening to them and they're like, "You're not listening." And I'm like, "I heard everything you said. I just don't agree with you." That's a big one for me. Being
Yeah.
told that I'm not listening. I think
Yeah.
because it's so triggering for me, I'm like, "No, I would never do that to somebody. I would never
Yeah.
not listen." Time management. If I
Mhm.
feel like they're not doing something fast enough, or we're going to be late, we're not going to make it on time, we're running behind, that triggers me a lot.
Mhm.
And I have to stop rushing my children all the time because not every situation needs to be rushed.
Mhm. We have a lot of the same triggers.
Probably all gentle parenting millennials are
Yes.
triggered by pretty much the same things.
Yeah, yeah, which is really interesting because I can tell when people were not raised in that way because their attitude towards things is just so different. And
Yeah.
I almost sometimes admire that people who are just completely unbothered by certain things that would stress me out. I'm just like, how does this not bother you?
Yeah. My husband was actually raised, I would say, more permissively, not traditionally. And so I can see that in his parenting, nothing bothers him. And he doesn't really consistently hold boundaries. And once I started to do a lot of reparenting on myself, I could see how the differences in how he was raised versus how I was raised were really coming through in our parenting styles.
And I'm sure there's other components to that, being raised in that
Hmm.
way. My husband was raised traditionally as well, but maybe a little more traditionally than me. So there are
Yeah.
things that bother him a lot more than they bother me. But it's just really interesting how our upbringings really impact the way we see things and handle things as parents.
Yeah.
So, we talked a lot about our triggers on this episode, and I think this is such an important topic that we could continue to talk about it. In our next episode, you and I are actually going to go deeper into a trigger that we both have as parents.
When we were kind of prepping for this episode, we both found this one specific situation that just really triggered us both. And
Mhm.
so I'm really excited to talk through that in our next episode and open that up and see what that looks like for both of us.
Yeah, it'll be a really good conversation because in this episode, we just talked deeply about what a trigger is, how to reparent ourselves. Yet we have this one trigger that we both still have where we get stuck in those moments with our
Mm.
kids. So I'm also really excited to have that conversation with you in our next episode. Thank you for listening. We're grateful to have you in this community.
Parenting this way isn't easy. We're all learning, showing up every day, reflecting, repairing, and continuing to grow.
If anything in today's conversation resonated with you, or if you have a question or topic you'd like us to talk through in future episodes, we would love to hear from you. We'll share our contact information down below in the description.
Until next time, be kind to yourself. And remember, you are a fiercely gentle parent.